I want to step away from India for just a little bit and talk a little bit about what's happening globally.
Yes.
The US market, and I remember in Davos, you said that the outlook was that there is going to be global expansion in 2024. That was the forecast as far as the Mastercard Economic Institute was concerned. Right. And we've seen many developments since then, including the Fed finally moving on cutting rates. What's your sense on what this could potentially mean now in terms of consumer spending?
Right. So what I said in January at the World Economic Forum was that we see a resilient consumer, which is the base of a lot of our business. And that's held true throughout the year. So in our last earnings call, second quarter earnings call, yet again, we saw a resilient consumer globally in aggregate in the key markets. It's a discerning consumer. What does that mean? People make decisions, non-discretionary, discretionary spend, they balance, but in aggregate, we see pretty steady spending. This morning, I woke up to earnings from major U.S. banks.
Yeah.
A lot of investors look at the U.S. economy and see that as a bit of a barometer, and we see strong consumer spending continuing as far as those banks are concerned. So overall, the macro picture on the consumer side is pretty benign, but it's also true that rates still remain elevated, prices still remain elevated. So we have to see what the various landing paths are in the major economies around the world. So we keep monitoring central bank reactions and moves as they're trying to get back into the target range for inflation. But overall, the consumer yet again has adjusted over those last 2 years or so and made those trade-offs. One thing that was exciting to see this summer is, so this was the summer of travel, the summer of experiences. We have different categories of spend that we can aggregate and where we can see that. Travel, very strong this summer. Europe in particular, very strong. Singapore, very strong. So you look across that, people want to go and do exciting things, do that trip, go and see a show and all of that, and it's showing in our categories of spend. 2 years ago it was all about goods. Now it's all about services. The service economy is booming. That is a fundamentally global trend. And if we look specifically at India, the same. We see the same strength in consumer spending here.
You were talking about spending, and a data point that I picked up on this morning, and it's coming from the U.S. Retail Federation, talking about close to $1 trillion this holiday season coming up in winter. That's the kind of estimate that they're working with or forecasting, and that's higher year on year. What are some of the other headlines that you're picking up from the consumer trends, the consumption trends from across the world? You talked about how services is the big boost, and the experience economy is going through its own sort of surge. What are some of the other crucial trends that you're picking up that you're going to be focused on?
So the Mastercard Economic Institute projected holiday spending this year, very much in line with the retail report that you just said. So that's an exciting headline as we look ahead. And it fits with everything that I just said on the consumer sentiment. We believe the services economy and the spending on experiences will continue. Travel will be continuing. I think the other thing to look at, it's a picture in aggregate. So if you look at different countries around the world, it's not exactly the same situation because central bank reactions will be different across income bands. Pressures are felt in different ways at lower income bands. So those are just things that one needs to monitor and look for, but the headlines are fundamentally positive around consumer spending, and I think that's the one key point to keep in mind, because if the consumer is doing well, I don't think we have to worry that much about the economy overall.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC-TV18 on all of our digital platforms.